Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony, which this evening commemorates the 70th anniversary of Operation Blaze. This occurred on the 2nd of July 1952 during the Korean War. My name is Melanie Cassar, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Lieutenant General Rick Burr, Chief of Army. This evening's Last Post ceremony marks one of the final duties in uniform for Lieutenant General Burr, following 40 years of service in the Australian Defence Force. Lieutenant General Burr joined the Army in 1982, graduating from the Royal Military College Duntroon in 1985 to the Infantry Corps. He has seen service in the 8th 9th Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment and the Special Air Service Regiment, which he commanded in 2003 to 2004. His senior leadership roles have been diverse. He was previously the Deputy Chief of Army and prior to that had unique service as Deputy Commanding General, US Army Pacific, the first foreign officer to hold such a position. His operational commands include the theatre-level multinational command of all special forces assigned to the International Security Assistance Force in Afghanistan in 2008 and command of the Australian Special Forces Task Group in Afghanistan in 2002 and Iraq in 2003. Committed to the development of our future leaders, he has been an instructor at the Royal Military College Duntroon and Chief Instructor of the Australian Defence Force Warfare Centre, responsible for the education and training of ADF officers in planning joint operations. Lieutenant General Burr is a distinguished graduate of the United States Marine Corps Command and Staff College and graduate of the United States Marine Corps School of Advanced Warfighting. Lieutenant General Burr assumed command of the Australian Army on the 2nd of July 2018. Sir, we thank you for your service and wish you well in your future endeavours. This evening, we warmly welcome members of the ACT Reserve Forces Day Council, who are joining us this evening to commemorate Reserve Forces Day, which recognises the service and achievements of the Reserve Forces of the Australian Defence Force. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier.
Catapult Party, reverse! Catapult Party, breastbone!
If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Catapult Party, attention! Catapult Party, present arms!
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is good by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Catapult Party, shoulder up. Catapult Party, order up.
If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Sergeant Alexander Edwin Smith. Alexander Edwin Smith was born in Cairns, Queensland on the 15th of November 1928. Known as Alec, he grew up in the nearby town of Redlynch, where he attended the local state school. He later gained employment working with the office staff of Northern Australian breweries. On the 25th of June 1950, North Korean forces invaded South Korea, starting the Korean War. The Australian government called for volunteers to help fill the ranks of the Australian Army, which had become a permanent force in 1948. Known as K-Force, those who volunteered were required to serve for 3 years, with one of those years being spent in Korea. Among the earliest volunteers was Alex Smith. By early September, he found himself in Japan with the 3rd Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, which was being made ready for deployment to Korea. 3RAR arrived in Korea on the 28th of September, and over the following months saw major action in North Korea, fighting actions known as the Apple Orchard, the Broken Ridge, Cheongju and Pakchon. Chinese entry into the war in November saw United Nations troops forced to withdraw. 3RAR played a prominent role during this time, fighting several rearguard actions before the line was stabilised south of Seoul. By February 1951, the US-led ground forces of the United Nations had gone back on the offensive, advancing back towards the 38th parallel. On the 28th of February, Smith was badly wounded during the battle for Hill 614, and he was evacuated to Australia via Japan. After recovering, Smith transferred to the 1st Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, which was being brought up to full strength for deployment to Korea. His experience saw him promoted to corporal. 1RAR sailed for Japan in March 1952, and after a brief halt, sailed on to Korea, arriving at Busan in early April. The battalion spent several months training before entering the front line for the first time on the 19th of June. By this time, Smith had been promoted to sergeant and was platoon sergeant of 2 Platoon A Company. 1RAR was tasked with capturing a Chinese prisoner and destroying their positions on Hill 227 in a daylight raid to be conducted on the 2nd of July. Known as Operation Blaze, this was 1RAR's first major operation in Korea and the only occasion Australian troops carried flamethrowers during the war. The operation, led by Major David Thompson, began just after 9 a.m. The assault platoons reached their objective without being fired upon, but the Australians came under heavy Chinese rifle, machine gun and mortar fire as they reached the top of Hill 227. The Australians suffered a number of casualties, including Major Thompson's radio operator, who was killed by a direct hit from a mortar round. Thompson had been nearby, but was not wounded. 2 Platoon, slightly off the summit of the hill, provided covering fire while destroying Chinese bunkers in their area. Smith's bravery was to the fore throughout. He accompanied a machine gun team from 2 Platoon's reserve section and assisted in neutralising Chinese positions that were firing on the raiders. He accompanied the machine gunners when they moved to another fire position to provide covering fire to 1 Platoon. When Smith saw a member of 1 Platoon wounded by shrapnel from a Chinese mortar round, he ran to his assistance. Mortar rounds continued to fall, and Smith was hit in the throat by shrapnel. He was recovered by 1RAR's stretcher bearers and evacuated through A Company's regimental aid post to hospital. The raiders withdrew shortly after, and by 11:30 a.m. were back in their own positions. Although the Australians caused numerous Chinese casualties and destroyed several bunkers, they suffered 3 men killed and 34 wounded, including Smith's, whose wounds proved fatal. He died the day after the raid. It was a heavy price to pay for limited success. Smith was laid to rest in the United Nations Cemetery at Busan on the 7th of July. He was 23 years old. Alex Smith's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among the 340 Australians who died as a result of their service during the Korean War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sergeant Alexander Edwin Smith, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
Party, shoulder up.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Party, hands up. Shoulder up.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Catapult party, inwards, turn. Catapult party, quick, march.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.